Hi, good morning.
Hello.
Good
Um,
morning.
So to dive in, my name is Tirza Monet. I'm a brand strategist and accountability coach and founder of Yes and Collective. Today, we're going to be talking about empathy as a business strategy and building businesses with community in mind. But before we dive in, I just want to set the stage before I introduce these amazing speakers. Um, So empathy is a skill. It says, I see you, I feel you, I trust you, I understand you, I'm also looking out for you. For us and many women, it's not a trend or afterthought, as you'll see as we move through this panel. It's a foundation for how we create businesses that truly connect and how we build trust in community that shapes the future. Our goal today for this panel is to cut through all the noise and get straight to the heart of what it means to lead with true empathy, showing how it can transform workplaces, leadership, and create community impacts. What I love about each one of these ladies is that they don't speak in theory. Each one of you guys is a personification of empathy in action, and I hope that everyone else gets to appreciate the amazingness that is each one of you today, and ultimately, it's how we align with purpose, make decisions with clarity, and create impact with grace. So, to bring these ideas to life, I'm thrilled to introduce each of the incredible women that are joining us today on the panel. Each of them are visionaries, innovators, change makers who are actively reshaping what it means to do business and infuse empathy in each one of their industries. So, I'm going to start with Pri. So, Pri, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I can. Good morning, everybody. So excited to be here. My name is Pre, and I'm a writer by trade and by heart. And now I am focusing my talents on working with mission-based organizations to basically redesign their culture so that they can have more thriving ecosystems and create sustainable workplace environments for the people who carry out their missions. So, yes.
Thank you for joining us. And then I'm going to jump over to Marie real quick before we even. Marie is going to be really humble, but this girl's been amazing since Ricky Lake. So like, she just celebrated her 16th anniversary. So I'm going to go ahead and let her jump in and share.
Well, thank you. My name is Marie Dene, and I am the founder and creator of The Curvy Fashionista. We are a digital media publication that caters specifically to the 67% of women in the United States who are a size 14 and above. We are a leading digital media publication that caters specifically to the plus size community through content, tips, trends, wellness, lifestyle, and entertainment content. So we speak to the full person in the plus size woman as the plus size woman. So that has been that's who I am. That's what I do. That's what I champion.
Awesome. And then Halima, go ahead and share.
Hello, everyone. I am Halima Saleh Khan. I am an event strategist and event designer, and also the vice president of a newly found nonprofit called The Current Event. I'm currently looking for some incredible businesses that are trying to actually build impact into their business strategy and work with the local nonprofits in their community. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And Aubriana?
Hello. My name is Abriana, and I am the founder of Black Unicorn Creative. We are a brand and culture consultancy, and I work with businesses in the agriculture and animal health industries. I also am a children's book author. The children's book series is called Cowgirl Cameron, and I have a podcast called Black in the Saddle. So I'm a cowgirl too.
Awesome. And then Anne Marie, who's been saving my life lately.
Thanks for that. Hi, everybody. My name is Anne Marie, and I am the founder of CyberShero, which is a cybersecurity firm focused on helping individuals, nonprofits, and small businesses. I'm currently leading a security operations center that works 24/7, 365. And I'm on the board of a nonprofit organization that is based in Uganda. And our goal is to help students and their families to make sure that they have they know technology and they can explore the world at large and altogether. Thank you for having me, and you can follow me on LinkedIn or you can reach out to me. I look forward to working with more nonprofits and getting them, secure because they are actually one of the top attacked organizations because people do not like when people do great things and small businesses. So please feel free to reach out if you have any cybersecurity concerns or technology in general.
Awesome. And we are missing one speaker. She fell extremely ill, so we're sending love to her, and we're going to move right along. So starting out, how we want to talk about how can businesses integrate empathy as the foundation, and as a foundational strategy of their business rather than as a secondary consideration. And I'd love to start with Anne Marie.
Thank you. So, when it comes to businesses and using empathy as a foundation, I think it's about knowing your customer, right? And how do you serve your customer? I always tend to tell people, we're serving the person, so we kind of have to take a step back, listen to them, listen to what their concerns are. In technology and cybersecurity, we tend to have a very siloed way of thinking, and we're like, okay, it's just ones and zeros. It either works or it doesn't work. Or I know most people have heard it when we're like, oh my God, users are the worst. Like the human element is the only thing in cybersecurity that you cannot predict. And so knowing that in mind and having empathy for people and knowing that attackers also use people's empathy, they pry on people's emotions, they see what's going on in the world, they know that people right now are looking for money, everybody's looking for an opportunity, everybody wants the quick result. And so knowing that, hey, people in the world are actually struggling, and we need to help them, and some people straight up just don't know. Like, I know a lot about cybersecurity, but I don't know a lot about writing books. Like, I've never written a book. I can't be a brand consultant because I don't know a lot about that. So applying empathy and also being able to know, hey, I know this, they know that, so let's work together and create something beautiful. And so that's how I think that foundation can be built. And honestly, just caring about people, care about your customers. Yes, they are making you money, but I think if you care about them, you actually do end up making relationships that last longer. For example, right now, everybody's leaving Facebook because of what Mark Zuckerberg did in the past few days. And so creating those communities outside of social media and having that empathy of like, hey, people are mad right now. How can I help? Where do I fall within all of this? So that's what I have to say on that.
Awesome. And I'm going to jump over to Marie on this because we actually had a really interesting conversation, which was amazing, about what you're doing, even with the fire efforts. So I'd love for you to jump in and kind of share what it means to be a representative of empathy in even times like this. Oh, you're muted.
I think what's really important is when you realize who you're serving, where your community is. Like, without them, you don't have a business. Without them, you don't exist, right? So, for us, like yesterday, I knew like, okay, we need to do something. I'm here in Southern California, but I'm not impacted by the fires, but I have community members who are. And so for me, like, I looked at, okay, what do? I provide information, I provide resource. So I was able to round up all of the brands that are catering to plus size business, or to the plus size community, whether it's providing clothing or doing drives, into an article and we put it together, and it was like, I had all this anxiety yesterday, but once I finished it, I felt like, okay, this is how I can help. I reached out, talked to people, make sure like I knew what was going on. But then the interesting part was that today a retailer, a retail brand reached out to me, and they were like, we're going to go to this one place that you mentioned. Is there anything else that you need? So it showed me like how my actions helped further impact or help better, it was like a domino effect. And I think when you recognize and realize that you are in a space of service, yes, you are making money. Yes, your business provides a solution to a problem, but you have to also remember that there are needs, there are emotions, there are feelings, there are human beings on the other side of whoever's receiving what you're providing. And you have to consider that, because especially now, community is going to be even more impactful, recognizing, acknowledging, and speaking to or solving their issues. So you have to keep that in mind at every step you take.
Awesome. And what I love about that is that you're not going out of step you're creating something like impact, but you're not taking yourself out of alignment with the things that you already do. I think a lot of times when people hear us say like, oh, you need to create empathy, oh, you need to care, and it's a little bit more, they think that you have to create something that's like some crazy mission outside of how you're already serving. Sometimes it's just shifting the focus a little bit and saying like, okay, who needs what I'm already giving?
And it's also passing the mic, right? So I didn't have to create an event, although we do create events and we do have them. I didn't need to create an event. The community I am a part of is already doing. So for me, it's like, how can I support what's already there? How can I help, their mission, their focus? Like because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It is about the community I belong to. And I think that is very important when we're, as business owners, as businesses, we have to be mindful of that community, because that community, there may be a time where we need that assistance, and that same community will be showing up for us.
Right. Aubriana, did you have something that you wanted to chime in on this one before we? Because I know you got this whole give a damn.
That has kind of settled with me a lot recently. I think that there is empathy that needs to be extended to your customers and your audience and things like that. But as leaders, we also need to be modeling the empathy we expect our teams to show. And I think there sometimes can be a misrepresentation of the expectations we have for our people. If we say, okay, why are we not reaching these goals, or why are we not achieving the metrics that we have been measuring for XYZ? I feel like there should be some sort of metric for empathy, right? Like if that is, many times that can be the source of a lot of the challenges that we see, that where we're not reaching our outcomes in other places. So if we integrate that into how we operate as a business, we'll start seeing some of those outcomes change in positive ways.
I think that's amazing, because a lot of times when we get too stuck, I always say like sometimes the problem's bigger than the spreadsheet. It's the nuances, it's how you show up at the coffee pot, in the break room, those type of inner nuances of how people move in businesses that I think sometimes we lose sight of in the spreadsheet. Awesome. So we're gonna move along to our next question. We'll tap in with a few more. So what steps, like in nuance to this, what steps can organizations take to build workplace culture where empathy is naturally like a part of the decision-making process? And I'd love to hop in this with Halima.
Honestly, one, recognizing that you need to put people first. That is something that is implemented into very selective business methods. I know GatherVerse is one of those. That's been one of their principles, humans first. And you cannot go anywhere without the humans. Just like Marie said, that's your audience, those are your supporters, those are your community members. You can't do anything without them. And I would say that you really need to recognize that the needs of the people change just as much as people change. Your community grows with you, your audience grows with you, so it's they're never going to be the same as when you did your, okay, what does my audience need, and you're starting out. 10 years later, even if your audience has stuck with you through those 10 years, they're different people, just like you are a different person and you're a different business. So you have to recognize that they're going to change, and being able to see whether you can anticipate the change or at least recognize when it's happening, that puts you a step ahead of everyone else. So that's what I think.
Thank you. And Aubriana, can I jump over to you for this one?
Yeah. One of the things that I work with my clients on is actually outlining what empathy looks like. Because we can say that we have it, but how do you know? What is the behavior? How are you actually integrating that into your workflows and your ability to make decisions? If people aren't confident in what empathy looks like, they're not going to be able to say definitively, I have the empathy that you expect. And so when we talk about building brand and culture, it's like what is important to this brand? What makes you different? You know, all of those things. But now what does that look like? What do the values that you say you hold? What does a people first business look like? Write that out. Write what that behavior is. Is that going the extra mile when you're talking about, you know, customer service? Does that look like spending more time training people in their onboarding when they get hired? You know, really outlining those processes will allow people to feel more confident in making decisions, saying, yes, this is empathetic. No, this is not. I think one of the things that is not empathetic is assuming that everyone has the same definition and has the same behavior for that word. It's not true. And so as a founder, as a CEO, you need to outline your expectations and engage your team in conversations around that. They can say, hey, that's not necessarily what I thought it would be. And you might be opening up perspectives that you didn't even think of. And that's how you allow your team to add value to the vision and connect their work to the vision that you are trying to put out into the world. So I think really connecting those things is really important.
Are you doing that through like empathy maps?
Yeah, empathy maps, they can be process maps. I kind of go from values to behaviors, practices, rituals, and kind of pull it all together so that they understand how to craft the culture that they want in their business instead of just letting a culture happen to them.
So many companies do. So many organizations.
They do.
Awesome. And then I'm gonna jump over to Pri because I know you definitely have a voice in this as well.
Yes, I think, you know, everybody said a lot of what I already agree with. So I will add that I think it starts with like defining human centered, right? And then understanding that human centered really, really means the experiences, the backgrounds, all the parts and pieces that people come with, and how you can integrate that into your processes, right? Like not just building processes that tend to the entity, which would be your business. And that's not to say that we're not following through on your mission, right? We are always following through with the mission. But if you're bringing in people, you know, humans to execute your mission, then you have to figure out what is the easy is not the best word. What is the path of least resistance for people to walk in here and partner with me, my organization, or business, or whatever the case is, to meet the end goal, the end consumers, the end community, whatever the case. How can I take this? If you're just starting out, then you might have more of a easier way of building, because you have a team from the ground up, so you have a team to like look at. But if you're already having a team, then you have to go in and you have to like make sure that your assessments are very human centered. Like, be able to, when you're surveying the team that you have, or the team that you're building from, or whatever the case, how can you figure out a collective a meeting place where the processes touch each point of their experiences, their needs, right? Their backgrounds. Like, how can your processes meet them there without losing the goal of the organization? So, yeah, that's really, really huge for me. Is like, processes are important, but if you just build processes without accounting for the people that will be maintaining the processes and keeping those in place, then it'll probably, you know, lead to like a burnout culture, or whatever the case. And like Abriana and the other lady said, we don't really want to let culture build itself. Yes.
One of the things that I think is really interesting, or what's kind of coming up for me as you say that, is like, I think about, like, I've worked with, you know, over 400 businesses, right? And I'm like, the difference between the companies that are usually created by males versus females, like, how you mentioned, like, we like to streamline things and like make it easy and as simple as possible. I think that a lot of male cultures really are like, they value hard work, so they make things harder sometimes. And not to say all systems are like that, but I find that even with working with my clients, they have like almost this resistance to like letting go of like the hard work portion, where I'm just like, it could be easier. You'll make more money if it's easier. Like, you can move on to another challenge if this is easier. Like, what point are you ready to let this go, so that you can build a culture of like optimization and like being able to, like, you know, make things more streamlined. um Finding that balance of like how much friction needs to be in the culture to like still make people feel like they're working towards a common goal. I think it's interesting, um to that point. um okay, so let's move to the next one. So that brings me to the next question is, how can leaders cultivate the mindset and the skills necessary to prioritize empathy? I know I watched a couple of sessions earlier and they were talking about a lot of the women founders, some of them, like, you know, a lot of them starting to get sick and things like that as they're raising capital or building their businesses or leading their teams. Like, I know I've even experienced that as well. So how do you cultivate the mindset and skills necessary for prioritizing empathy, but also like maintaining a healthy environment? And I'm going to start with Pri on this one too.
Okay, yay, my favorite. So, I feel like we need to also, number one, humanize the leader. Just because, we built these like very rigid hierarchical structures of this person is at the top, they should be able to deal with whatever comes their way. We kind of got to like dissolve that mindset to rehumanize them and understand that if we want our leaders to lead better and to feel better, whatever the case, we have to meet them at their humanness as well. So, being able to assess a leader's capacity, not just their capabilities, but their capacity for whether or not they can lead with empathy and compassion. We cannot insert soft skills into a hard body. So a lot of times it's the somatic work that you have to go through, right? If your leader we're already enrolled into these very, rigid structures, and they're not saying they're good or bad, but they're a little imbalanced, right? So we have structures that call on people to fit into these boxes that reach way too far out from their nature. and it is making them sick. So you cannot ask somebody to lean into empathy if they're self-abandoning, to try to uphold the processes and the protocols that you gave them. You have to build out fluidity and space for leaders to work on themselves as well, and not just like reading like personal development books and all those things. And again, all those things are helpful, but their body is probably in just as much burnout as their teams, right? So we can't forget the leader. We have to remember to prioritize the leader's well-being as well first, and then that will um, extend itself into the team while still keeping the leader intact themselves. So I think, to long story short, a lot of bringing in um, professionals from different areas for wellness, like somatic work, to really assess where your leaders are, where the mentality is, and whether or not they're able to move into the next level. And if they're not, that's fine. Just a little bit more work. They could do a little bit more work, but figure out the nature of your leaders and go from their capacity and their capabilities, and not just where you think they should be at as a structured, rigid, leader. Yes.
What I think is so interesting about what you said is, like, one, a lot of people don't know what somatic work is, especially if they haven't gotten that far. Usually you reach burnout and then you start learning what those things are. When I first started, I remember like going through that phase of reading all the business and self-help books and stuff like that. And I'm like, why do all of these people end up in yoga? I like, as a young 21, 22, I'm like, all these people become yogis at some point. And I'm like, there has to be some reason why this happens and stuff. And they don't talk about that in business school as much. So I would love to jump over to Marie on this, because I know you probably have plenty to share on this with the longevity of the business that you've been running.
I think one of the things that Pri said is like, recognizing capacity versus capability. But I also think too, it's really important as leaders, and as we have to kind of surrender that we don't know everything. We know a lot, but we don't know it all. And that then opens us up or prepares us to be receptive to the tools that are going to be needed as we are on this journey. As someone who has had, various different bouts of mental health issues or breakdowns, like for me, I've had to learn what it really means to prioritize self. Like I had to learn some of the hard way, like, whether it's like realizing that my blood pressure is like crazy and I'm over here talking about like, I need peace. I'm not chasing peace, I'm chasing low blood pressure. Like for me, it was really important for me to like, okay, well, if I'm not okay, my business is not okay. If I'm not okay, how I'm navigating, like it reflects and shows up in my business. Like I had to really take a stop and like find the right tools, because what it may be somatic for one person, but it may be yoga for the next, or it may be human design, or it may be reading a book. Like everyone's going to have the different tools that work for them. For me, I had to go on a journey on finding what kind of tools work the best for me, because once it started clicking for me, then I saw how I had operated before, how I had, how I may have been passive aggressive, or kind of dug my head in the sand, or overlooked, or allowed myself to be busy but not impactful. So it's important that we are mindful about like what we keep around us, what is pouring, what is educating us, what is, I want to say, again, to Pri's point, a lot of it we have to deconstruct, or what's the other D word? There's another word that we decondition ourselves because of the expectations. I find, as someone who does human design as a projector, like my energy has to be, optimized in certain times. So I have to find out what works for me in order to be my most impactful. But that requires a lot of self reflection and introspective work, which then allows for us to be present and to be receptive and to be sensitive and aware of others around us. So I think as business owners, as leaders, it's important that we are just as much in touch with ourselves and where we are in our journeys to then be able to show up for others, because especially if we're in leadership roles, I have found that a lot of the mistakes, lessons, learnings I've been able to pass on to other people. I've been able to then share, and better relate to or understand or have patience with as someone is navigating through something. I'm able to be like, okay, I understand.
Right. Yeah. And it's sad sometimes that we have to go through it in order to understand it. Sometimes you would hope you would hope that you could just,
life.
Yeah, it is. I know I had a moment recently with a specialist where I was telling him, I was like, it used to be that I could just push through. I could just like do the whole thing where we decide that we're going to do the thing and we just push through. And I'm like, now I can feel things. He's like, well, we need you to feel things. And I think as women, like a lot of us have been conditioned that like in order for us to get ahead or move through business and create these organizations and things like that, that we have to just like set the target and just move. And it's like a lot of us get sick because of it, because we're not supposed to be pushing our emotions aside like that. It makes us sick.
And when you add layers, like,
Layers.
being a Black woman or growing up in a church or you have these layers that color how we're supposed to show up, that color how we're supposed to mask, right? That color how we're supposed to emulate what empathy is supposed to look like, right? So it's like once you start deconditioning and stripping down and really getting to understand who you are and what is needed for you, like it looks completely different than what you've been told. And so then you have to learn how to then be courageous or audacious in how you show up in your day-to-day to then be in a space to help positively impact or positively lead, from a space of authenticity versus conformity.
Right. Halima, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
I will just say that one thing, just as far as my experience in both being in leadership and not being in leadership, is leading by example. If your teammates or your director or anybody around you is doing the push through, when you're like, you're wearing thin, you're mentally, physically exhausted, but they're pushing through. They're still on all the meetings. They're still answering emails late. They're still not in following the boundaries that they should have. It kind of like spills out to the rest of everybody for whatever reason. Even if you have your extensive boundaries yourself, you can be like, oh, somebody just sent me that email at 10 p.m. Okay, I'm not gonna say anything about that email at 10 p.m. But your brain already started thinking about how you're gonna respond to that email at 10 a.m. And so it spills. So leading by example and keeping those boundaries and making sure you're taking care of yourself, and empathizing with yourself is super, super important, because people will notice if you're not, and you can't pour out of a cup that's empty. So
I love that, because I think that there's a lot of people that need to decondition themselves from the shame of saying, this is what I'm willing to do for now. And like even with the leaders, it's like I think a lot of times that whole go above and beyond culture sometimes like becomes harmful in that sense, just because like at some point everyone's doing that, and there's just no room for us to have like a safe container of like what should we actually be doing, like what is the actual normal. So I love that in terms of setting a baseline. Awesome. And then the next question is like, what approaches can businesses use to evaluate how well their goals align with the needs of the communities that they serve? So like, how are we getting visibility of the needs of the community? And we can jump to Pri on this one.
Okay, so I think just off the rip, just social listening, but like social listening without coming to the table with a answer, like actually figuring out how whatever you've placed into the environment has shifted the environment and impacted the people who are in the environment. So, for instance, there's a team that was just working on basically biophilic design for a apartment building that was built into the community, and they have not been listening to the community as well as they could have. And obviously community members, we have social media, so they've taken to social media and they're like, they don't like the design of the building, they don't like the how they are capitalizing off amenities that they feel like should be free to residents. They don't like the outdoor space that was promised one thing and wasn't. So the community is going to tell you. Society has already put us in place to want to express our opinions all the time. And so the community is giving you the data that you need. Go into it, figure out how to quantify that feedback, right? People's words or whatever, how to quantify the impact that you've already set in place. And then wherever you see the biggest gaps, start from there. Just start from filling in the gaps, right? Just literally go out, survey, interview, questionnaires, bring people in, ask them about products, services, expand your feedback loop, not just like you're getting it from one or two people. Like, make sure that if you are surveying a community, the sample size that you're, the people that you're surveying looks like the whole of the community, not just one little section of the community, but how the community looks represented as a whole, like everybody together. So yeah, I really just think that it starts at listening. And something that I wanted to say before was empathy is a skill set, right? That's why I said, like, these are soft skills. So empathy and compassion, these things we don't have to look at them as like, oh, this is in my personality. It can be, but it's still a skill. And a part of having empathy, like the other lady said, is to listen to what people really need, what people really want, just the things that they're asking for. Give people what they're asking for if you genuinely want to serve, or at least meet them at a comfortable compromise without self-sabotaging or abandoning your initial mission. So really listening from a genuine listening space.
Awesome. And then Marie, I'd love to tag in with you on this one.
What I think is, in addition to what Pri said, I think it's really important to show up in the spaces that your community is in. Oftentimes we have had quite a few conversations with different brands and retailers, and they're like, oh, well, we don't know. And we're like, well, you should come here, come to this event, or come to this area, or come join this conversation so you can hear and learn and take that information back to your team so you can implement. I think not only is it important to show up, but it's important to, I know this may sound kind of wild, but you should probably have people on your team who are part of the community you're serving. Like, go figure, but there are quite a few companies that their whole leadership team does not reflect the community they're serving. Yet they're so driven and so focused on the hard metrics like the ROI and the MRR and the CAC, but they miss the EQ. They miss that EQ, that emotional quotient that drives people to make those purchases, that drives people to prefer one brand or one retailer over the other, it is important that you understand that that emotional connection, especially depending on the communities you serve, is even more important, right? So some communities, the emotional security, the emotional need being met is so much more important than an ad that's somewhere that nobody's paying attention to.
Yeah. I I think Pri and I had a conversation about this about back in 2020 when a lot of the BLM movement started. There was a lot of companies that reached out to quite a few people in our community that were like, hey, like, how do we write our statements? And I'm just like, if you had the people on your team, you would not be reaching out to me in the middle of like, you know, these BLM movements and stuff to ask me how you should be responding to this crisis. And it was so dumbfounding. But also was like, okay, like this is the time for you guys to, you know, team up with people. This is the time for you guys to fix your hiring efforts and things like that, because you shouldn't wait until you're in the middle of a tragedy to start trying to beef up your team to make it look good for the press and stuff. Oh, go ahead, Emery.
I have one thing to add on a technical like aspect. Everything you guys said is very correct, and we've seen literally products die because they get rid of people on the team. Um, like Google got rid of their ethics person and the woman of color who was helping them with their AI, and right now everyone is like, "Oh my God, we can't like Gemini isn't it? We don't like it." The same thing happened, with Twitter, now X. He fired everybody who has a sound voice and, would keep the platform somewhat fair. The same thing with VR. They created a product and made it super expensive that it's almost inaccessible. And it's like, did you actually, go out and do like bottom up research? Like you have to start from the bottom all the way up and interview all these people and get to know. And I've seen great technology products literally die just because they did not go into the community to talk to them and ask them what they needed, nor teach them on how to use the product. I think we always forget that there has to be some training. Just because I know it doesn't mean everybody knows it. Like there's some products that are super easy for me to use because I have the technical background. I can just go in and do all of these things. And people just don't know that. And organizations forget part of empathy is teaching the people, working with the community, letting them know that, hey, these tools are available. And we're seeing that with AI now. It's starting to become such a niche community and people are trying to adopt it, but no one's really educated on the fact that, hey, it's an assistant. It's not actually something that's fully intelligent because you're giving it the intelligence, you're feeding it, you're training it. And so I think it takes like empathy to recognize that, hey, I need to go out in the community and teach the people who are using my product on how to use it and get that feedback, create that feedback loop, and keep them involved in the process.
Yeah. I think a lot of times right now there's a lot of people using like the ad adoption test versus like just seeing how many people will just purchase the thing as is versus like we used to be so in the weeds with the user testing and stuff. I'm seeing that a lot where people are just more so looking at things from a marketing perspective versus like an actual like user perspective. So that's beautiful. We have a little bit less than 5 minutes, so we're going to step into the last question and we're just going to kind of do a lightning round on this one. Actually, I'm going to skip to this one. So this one's about innovations and how we can create innovations while still kind of keeping the foundation there and not losing ground with your community. So I'm going to jump over to Marie on this one.
I think that it's important to be open, receptive, and flexible. There have been brands that I have pitched different ideas to that spoke directly to either their needs or our community needs. And the ones that have that we've worked with that have been open, like together we created something really amazing and innovative for our space that actually moved the needle in some positive way. I think it's important that brands remain open because you do have some that are so stuck and then they're the bureaucracy or like this is not how we do things or this is not the way or we've never like that mindset is only going to leave you stuck in the past. It's only going to be, and then you turn around and wonder, we've lost our market share. What happened? Like, you have to be listening, like Pri said, that social listening. You have to then be open and receptive and engage the community that you are serving. Like, do you know the thought leaders in this space? Do you know beyond the top 5 influencers? There are other folks in the space besides, or in addition to. Like, it's important to know what is going on, and you'd be surprised how many don't.
Right. We have less than a minute left, so I want to thank each and every one of you guys for joining us on the panel. If you guys have any closing thoughts, I'm going to start with Pri, lightning 30 seconds.
My closing thoughts are just remember your humanness, remember that it's complex, remember that empathy and compassion, all these things are not just a personality traits, but they're also skills, and be gentle with yourself and your community.
Love it. And then Anne-Marie.
Not to hop on what Pri said, but yes, definitely remember that you're human, and remember people change, things change, needs change, and education is really, really important. We cannot stop learning. We need to expand. We have social media. Don't just use it to be in like that niche space. There's a whole world out there. Go out and explore the world, and keep learning. I think that will help a lot with empathy and community.
Awesome. Aubriana?
I'm going to be a little contrarian here and just make sure that everyone understands that empathy doesn't mean making everybody happy. It means choosing who you are going to serve. And in order to do that, in order to stand out and build a brand that actually resonates with people, you can't resonate with everybody. So empathy does not mean making everybody happy, and make decisions that serve the community that you want to serve.
And then Halima?
I just want people to remember that you can find alignment in your supporters, your neighborhood, your community. You can find those that have the same missions, the same visions as you, and build up things together. You don't have to do it alone. And the key is honestly asking. Ask and you shall receive. Whether you're asking for help, asking for feedback, asking for education, ask.
And then finally, Murray.
I think it's important to remember and acknowledge the community that you're serving. As a business, you are serving a community. And so it's not all about you. It is about the people whom you are helping, and keeping that in mind, because that should be driving and leading the steps, the missions that you're doing. This way, like, it becomes like everyone's happy. Your community is served, your stakeholders are happy, because it becomes a positive loop of support, sales, service, support, like it just keeps going. I think it's really important to understand and recognize who you are helping, who you are serving, and knowing what it really means to show up for them.
Awesome. And then we're going to leave on the final note of break down walls, open doors, and don't make excuses. All right. We want to thank the GatherVerse for having us for the S.H.E Hero Summit. We're really excited to see how things move forward in this next chapter.